You're not happy with me this morning because I'm afraid I'm giving it to Gregg Wallace. Don't want his career over. I couldn't care less whether MasterChef continues or not. I don't watch it. Bake Off, then I would feel strongly. But we are talking about that this morning. I'd love to get your thoughts on his basically his defence. It seemed to be yesterday was that middle-class women of a certain age, a tiny proportion of people who've appeared on his many shows, 40,000 contestants over the years, and he said, look, come on, that's the allegations, but there are numerous now complaints made about his sexually inappropriate behaviour, not just words, not just bants in the pub, but far more than that. I want to know what your reaction to his defence, what your reaction is to what I'm saying. And indeed, Sam Armstrong, who's a commentator who's joining us today, who's very much saying, you know, and you're with the free speech union as well, you know, people's right to say what you want. People are allowed to say what they want, but you know what, again, if it was like the equivalent of sort of racial or homophobic bants, oh, well, everyone would have an issue with it then, but women are just supposed to put up with it because it's always been like that. And his defence seems to be, I'm a working-class bloke, everyone's having a go at me.
But hang on.
I know plenty of working-class blokes who don't talk like that to women.
Well, look, there's a bunch there, but, right, can we just start with one thing, actually?
Yeah, I need to read out the number. Okay, you can start. I will promise you, I'll hand over to you. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK to 87222. You can get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1 standard network rate message. I'm just going to quickly remind us, everyone, what else we're talking about today. Not just Gregg Wallace, but also more than 20,000 people have now crossed the channel in small boats since Labour came to power. We're going to be talking to Nigel Farage about that in about 20 minutes. Also talking to him about a review launched today to radically reform, possibly even replace the World Health Organization. That's something that Donald Trump may well be helping Nigel Farage with. Oh, yes, and is Elon Musk going to be giving him $100 million to win the next general election? Plus, the Metropolitan Police officers, 9 out of 10 of them in one survey, who say the Notting Hill Carnival is a war zone and they'd rather crawl naked through broken glass than be on duty at the annual event. I'd rather crawl naked on broken glass than attend the annual event. But anyway, we're going to be talking about all of that in this hour. Right, Sam Armstrong, your defence of Gregg Wallace. Off you go.
Right, let's just start with one thing. Not all women... I might get shot for saying this. It's eminently
in this
possible.
Studio.
Not all women find sexual innuendo unpleasant.
No, I don't. I'm not bothered by it normally.
And actually, not all blokes like it. There's plenty of blokes that dislike it, and there's plenty of women who, in the workplace, will give you far more than any bloke you've ever met down. You know,
I know a female employer who had to have a word with her female staff because they had a young, junior, quite good-looking guy, and she had to call them aside and go, if we were all men and he was a woman, we would be in a tribunal right now. I need you to stop going, ooh, whenever he bends over and things like that. Right.
Point 2. One of the things people liked about Gregg Wallace on television was his persona, was the fact that he was a bit of an idiot and he was saying some stupid things. You know, we've all seen that video going around about his comments about tarts and all the rest of it on TV, right? That was part of his persona. That was part of who he was. Right. Point 3. There are a relatively small number of allegations made by a number of people who, and this is no criticism of them, say, I didn't personally find it that offensive, or I didn't personally find it...
A number of them do say they did.
But I was worried that others did. OK, so we are talking... You're then left with a relatively small number of complaints of conduct over a number of years of conduct, none of which, other than one claim that someone said that could be illegal, but we've got no idea what the camera assistant thought of it. No one's gone to the police. He hasn't committed a crime. It's not clear what, if any, exact guidelines in the workplace he broke.
No one's, I mean, the crime aspect, I think that's a red herring.
It's not.
What is and what is not acceptable in a workplace is not always, well, it was within the law, so it's OK.
Well, you've got to have guidelines. You've got to have... People have got to know what the rule is that they're breaking. They have to understand it.
You think he didn't know that a junior, that a member of... No, sorry, that someone who's competing on a cooking show, that when she bent down and he was there, would not want him to mime her giving him oral sex. You think he needed to have a memo to tell him that?
Well, we have
really?
We have a very small number of allegations which, in my view, obviously cross a line. There is a number of others here, and they're all getting thrown together. They're all getting bound up.
True.
I imagine he was being encouraged to keep this kind of banter going on the television because they thought it was good for ratings.
But he didn't say this stuff on air.
He did say a number of it on air.
Some of it, but we're talking about... But this is the thing, and again, the rules are different in terms of what women get away with, what men get away with. I can't bear... I mean, the Mel and Sue, when they did the Bake Off, I mean, God, it was so tedious.
You don't like it?
No, but I'm not offended by it. I just find it's just not... silly sexual puns. It's not funny. I don't think it's very clever. It just doesn't amuse me. But I'm not saying they're being offended. But we're not talking about, like, hey, look at your roles. We're not talking about that. We are talking about him genuinely talking, ex-colleagues, complaining about, talking constantly about his sex life all the time. One man, a man, not woman, not a middle-class woman of a certain age, saying he kept boasting about having threesomes with prostitutes and alleging he loves being spanked or loves spanking. I don't know whether he's a spanker or a spanky. I don't know. I don't want to picture him doing any of it several times a day. Constantly talking about this. One time appearing without any clothing on and just a strategically placed sock. I imagine it's one of his tiny little ankle socks. Because generally I find men who talk about stuff like this all the time probably quite inadequate, because most normal blokes don't do that. This is now what you got away with a bunch of lads in the pub or in the not got away with it, quite welcome in the pub, you know, but got away with it in a factory in the 1970s. Times are different now, and it's not. I mean, okay, to a certain extent. To a large extent, I don't like things being too PC. As any of my past and former and possibly future colleagues will tell you, I mean, I F am blind. I'm very straight talker. Sometimes I would say too straight. So I'm not someone going, oh, but everyone needs to behave properly. We could all behave perfectly all the time. People don't always behave. I'm not pretending I do that. But there's a difference between this is sort of pathological in terms of his need to talk about sex and make everything about sex. I mean, as in, seriously, seek help, mate. Also, I mean, I can see a picture of him right now on a screen ahead of me. No one wants to talk about sex with that bloke. I'm sorry. I mean, he might have managed to... He's got younger and younger wives. He's obviously, I would say, not a big fan of middle-aged women because he's divorced a few of them when they get to middle age. He's got a little bit of the... the Leo about him, hasn't he? But it's entirely to do that. But you don't do it in the workplace. And what I find extraordinary is that no one basically said, hey, Mr. Sexual Innuendo Tourette's, you need to stop it. And literally stepped in every day and went, no, I would never, ever, ever allow a man to behave like that towards a junior female member of the team here. Ever, ever, ever. I would go straight up to them and have a word straight away. And if it continued, I would absolutely do something about it.
Look, I don't doubt there's clearly some truth in that. On the other hand, it is over 17 years. It is 13 complaints.
Most people don't complain.
OK,
we know that.
All right, Julie, but OK, so now we're going to say, right, we've not given you a law that you've broken. We're not going to test any of the allegations that have been made. You've got no right to challenge them.
We do need that. There's an investigation.
OK, but it's not like a court of law. If the allegations were more serious, if it was a crime, he would get to send his own lawyer to question the accusers and say, are you sure you said that? Are you sure it couldn't have been this? All of the rest of it. Okay.
And these investigations are often very inadequate and one-sided. I accept that.
He can't do that. And by the way, we're now turning around and saying, oh, well, just because we think, statistically speaking, the majority of these allegations are never made, we're going to assume that whatever is here is actually evidence of a far greater pattern of things that could or could not be more serious, and you're going to get even less chance
I would say this number of allegations from this number of women over this period of time, where lots of women who don't even know each other, suggests there is a pattern of unacceptable behaviour that should have been stopped by him, should have been stopped by the production company, should have been stopped by the BBC.
It does nothing more than suggest,
2017, he was called into a 90-minute meeting. There are nothing. I think it's very, very, very telling that his male colleagues, where are they to be seen?
Well, why would they come out? Why would they come out? Because they would be joined on in the pylon. They would be destroyed. I think people in show business are invariably cowards. They're not going to come out and risk their own career.
Oh, well, hold on a minute. You've just said all these people didn't come out. That's the exact reason why loads of women wouldn't have come out and wouldn't have said, look, I don't want him to be cancelled. I don't want his career over. I would like him to stop doing the stuff that he will know and cannot possibly not know is making women uncomfortable. I'm perfectly happy for him to continue continue his career. I don't want him cancelled. I don't want the end of his career. I don't think that's necessary.
That is going to be what happened. Look, it happened to, and I'm not saying that.
Well, those are the choices, aren't they? My guess is he's been told for years, this is going to come out, you need to stop doing it. And he's gone, that's all right, I can do what I want. I'm working class Gregg Wallace. He's the one who's made it about class. I think he's only got away with it for all those years because he's played that card.
We saw something quite similar.
It's an insult to other working class men who would never behave like that towards women.
We saw something quite similar with Kevin Spacey, though, a man who... Exactly the same pattern. Media allegations. Loads of people came and piled in. Went to court. Each and every time those allegations were put to him, were tested, he was found not guilty. Now, of course, that's
a lot of these, though, by the way, were events that were supposedly the allegations against Kevin Spacey were things that were alleged to happen without witnesses, at parties, in social situations. Now, I'm sorry, that is very different from being in a TV studio with cameras on you and numerous senior staff around watching it and hearing it. That's different.
They were very serious crimes, and because of that, Kevin Spacey, because of that, he actually had a chance to test them, and he was able to secure himself a number of acquittals. With Gregg Wallace, I mean, there's an irony here. This is probably the least, not to diminish them, but
of
compared
the Me Too stuff,
of the Me Too, it's probably the least serious that we have seen.
Fair point.
And yet, because of their lack of seriousness, because their only employment matters, not criminal offences,
he doesn't get the same defence.
Get the least due process.
I accept that, which is why I do not want him to lose his job or be cancelled. But I think he certainly needs to be investigated. If that many people come forward, it's not just one person, and the allegations, some of them are rather more serious than just a bit of bounce. I want to hear from you as well. You've heard both sides from us. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Lots more messages coming in. Let's talk about something that does involve actual crimes, and that's Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, who has been pardoned by the outgoing president today, not just for the gun licence, the lies in the gun licence form, because he had past drug convictions, not just for massive tax evasion, for which, by the way, he has been completely rightly prosecuted and was due to be sentenced, but he's been pardoned by Joe Biden for any act pretty much in the last 10 years. He basically claims there's been a political witch hunt against his son, just as there's, I believe, been a political witch hunt against Donald Trump. But again, I also still think that Donald Trump is banked rights. But I think there's been political motivation. He obviously expects that Donald Trump will live up to his threats, that he will, show judicial retribution towards the Biden family and Democrats generally. I think we can absolutely expect that to happen. It is an appalling way to run a country. It's an appalling way to run a criminal justice system. I mean, I think the American justice system is no longer fit for purpose in any way whatsoever. It used to be just if you were a poor black person, you didn't get proper justice. I don't think there's proper justice for anyone there now. It's completely and utterly corrupted by the politicisation and basically and by money. But I mean, the main thing with Joe Biden today is he said he wouldn't do it. Jill Biden said that he wouldn't do it. The official White House spokeswoman said he wouldn't do it only weeks ago, and now he's done it. Total and utter hypocrisy.
And what's worse, they claimed moral superiority over the Republicans, who they said would do it, would debase the justice system. In fact, they invoked this. They said vote for Kamala Harris, and before that, vote for Sleepy Joe, on the basis that if you let Donald Trump in, he's so corrupt, he's so dangerous, he's so reviles our political traditions, our institutions, that he would do exactly this. And then what do? The moment they're past the election, exactly the same thing. I actually think the only difference between Donald Trump and the Democrats is Donald Trump is prepared to own up to how much he's prepared to use and abuse the system.
Yeah, that's 2001, Clinton pardoned 140 people his last day. I mean, again, they all do this, including a billionaire being a fugitive for decades. He owed $48 million in taxes. I mean, is this the sort of person you do that? Clinton also granted his own brother Roger a presidential pardon in 1985 over a cocaine trafficking conviction. Trump pardoned the father of his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, as well. I mean, I'm sorry. So they all do it. They're all as bad as each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Clinton is responsible for starting it, and there's.
It's tacky.
There has been a stench that has descended over Washington, and I think we're now realising it's no wonder they call it the swamp. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm not totally sure Donald Trump is the answer on that front, but again, calling out the hypocrisy is absolutely fair, as he's done. 11:17 is the time. So much more I want to talk about.